on the News Channel 5 network. This is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris with you on this Tuesday. And we have a good show. I think tonight, or rather today, going into tonight, and what we had last night is one reason I think this is something a lot of people think about. As you know, the last couple of days, the city of Metro and others around the state with these really cold temperatures have announced there are warming shelters and things like that for folks who are homeless or do not have a place to stay. And when it gets dangerously cold like this, these shelters open up, and I just think it's so very important, but it highlights the issue that, of course, we all know, and that we even talked about yesterday with some of you on Open Phones Monday about homelessness in the growing city of Nashville, and it's an issue that continues to be something that needs to be addressed. We have two people on this morning. They're going to talk about this. We can take some of your phone calls if you want to join in the conversation as well. We'll get the phone number up there in a moment, but kind of set the table on where we're at, because these are the folks right at the middle of what is being looked at to be done to address that issue in Nashville. And it is an issue. If you come downtown, you can't help but see it. If you've been to any of the shelters to volunteer, you know that there is the need there. So let's introduce our guests this morning. We're talking about two members with the Metro Homeless Impact Division, the director, Judy Tackett, good morning to you, and Coordinated Entry Systems Manager, and we'll let her describe what that is, Jessica Ivey. Good morning to you both. Thanks for coming out. But remind folks again what the division was called before the name change?
It used to be the Metropolitan Homelessness Commission. Now it's the Homeless Impact Division of Metro Social Services.
That's just confusing. Just, pick something and stick with it, but that's good. The bottom line is the purpose is important, and it is what it is. I guess layout, I guess most people would guess, you're tasked with coordinating in the city efforts to help the homelessness, right?
Yes. Our task is really bring all the partners together that work on homelessness. And actually the name change happened this summer when we created in Davidson County a clear board, one governance structure around homelessness. We used to have two, and now it's more clear where that governance structure is, and all our efforts are combined with federal, state, local resources. How do we actually coordinate to build an effective housing crisis resolution system?
Is it all public, or do you guys sometimes coordinate with private entities that want to do help?
Absolutely private.
I figured you did.
A lot of nonprofits
and that's
are in
a big deal there, coordinating them as well. There's a lot of great groups that do address that. All right, so the idea there is to get them to work together. Now, as I said, this is a good time to talk about it. First of all, can you imagine the homeless population in places like Chicago or Minneapolis, where it's going to be negative? I mean, people will die in that temperature if they don't come in. And we have these warming shelters here. You guys do the best you can to get as many people. And you said when the key temperature is what, 28 degrees?
28 degrees. That's when Metro opens a extreme cold weather shelter. So we have enough capacity at Nashville Rescue Mission and Rooming In. They're doing this year-round, Nashville Rescue Mission and Rooming In, from November 1 through March 31st with congregations. There's a lot of congregations that help get people indoors.
Do you go out and seek them out? I know some will come on their own, but others don't want to, or maybe for whatever reason where they are not aware of it?
That's kind of where Metro comes in and the coordination comes in. So there are outreach groups, and one of them is Open Table Nashville, that go out to canvas and get volunteers to canvas and get people indoors and tell them where to go and what the options are. And then there's also Metro Police that really does a fantastic job.
Because they're out every day. They see it and make a note of it, right?
And give people rights to the shelters where they need to go.
True, though, that even when it gets below 28, there are those that just choose not to come in.
Yes. We hear that, we see that. At that point, outreach workers are trying to give them what they need to.
Whatever
they need to survive.
I mean, the tragic case we were talking about before the show, I don't know how cold it was that night, but last week, and it was in the news, a charred body was found off Stewart's Ferry, and a friend had been out looking for a colleague of his, and he was in a tent with a propane heater. And they think that may have sparked the flames, and he burned to death, trying to keep warm. And I saw that, and I just shook my head and said, gosh, there has to be some better way for these people. And I don't know if he was someone who didn't want to come in, or, I mean, there's a whole psychological issue there, isn't it, to address?
There is, and also I just need to be frank, when some people have barriers to shelter that we don't see. It can be a mental health issue, where people just cannot be around in crowds. I just actually, we had last week our annual point-in-time count, and we were out all night to count out, try to see and get a gauge how many people are outdoors on one given night.
On a given night.
Yes.
You all went out and canvassed areas
Yes.
where they're known to be.
Yes.
What's the number you came up with?
We don't know yet.
Oh, you don't
because
know.
no, we've done a lot of surveys and we're evaluating and looking at that right now. But when you look at the past 3 years, it's been 610.
I was going to say, it's in the hundreds, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it's been 600 plus.
Okay.
And just that's only the outdoor count. You know, so we also look at shelters.
Okay, as well.
Yes.
And
yes.
All right. So, Jessica, Coordinated Entry System Manager, what does that mean?
So the Coordinated Entry System is a piece of the Crisis Housing Resolution System, which Judy mentioned.
Right.
And Coordinated Entry is essentially something that's being done nationally, and it's really a streamlined approach to get people assessed quickly so that we can get their needs and wants, so we can get them connected to housing and services as quickly as possible. That's geared towards them.
Do they have to come to you, or is this, again, you're out there finding them, and so what, you find someone who's homeless out there, and if you can get them to agree to talk to you, you evaluate their situation, say, well, what can we do to help you?
It's both. So we do have places in which people can walk into or call into, but we also have, we're working on outreach coordination so that we're meeting everyone throughout the city of Nashville. So the idea is to have every nook and cranny canvassed and outreach to, so that if we do have those people that are a little harder to engage, we have the time to build that rapport so that we can eventually get them to a place where they want to work towards that housing and service connection.
And where do you take them?
It just depends. So some, it's looking at what are their barriers and are there certain programs that can
Well,
get
let's say
them
there's a
in.
mental illness, which a lot of them have.
It's connecting them to mental health services, such as like mental health
But
co-ops.
are there that many mental health services? That's the problem. We don't have many mental health beds or treatments. The sheriff, thankfully, is building this new jail just across the street, and there's going to be a whole mental health facility in there. He's a visionary. He's ahead of his time on that. I'm sorry. That needs to be addressed. There aren't enough beds here. Where are you going to take these people?
Well, and I think part of the thing, too, that we're discussing a lot, and it's also happening nationally, is housing first. So really looking at housing people, no matter what their barriers are, and then working on their barriers with them.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
So,
that's crucial first to get them shelter.
And one of the things, when you think systems, it's not necessarily the amount of beds alone, it's also how long are people staying in the beds. So for example, if we have, I'm making up numbers, 100 bed shelter, we can increase that to 400 bed shelter if we make sure we have a system in place where people stay there for 90 days on average. So it's getting people through. Yes.
Yeah, hopefully fine.
But to do that, the key is to have the housing options.
Right, they have to have some place to go.
Yes.
And I guess that gets to the other point, which some of our callers touched on yesterday, was we see just the rampant growth in especially the downtown area, and we see the property values skyrocketing. And a lot of folks who have some shelter are being forced out anyway, and I'll tell you, they're going to become homeless because they can't find something comparable unless they move way outside, and then how are they going to get back and forth or whatever? So that's the big issue now. What do you do, and where can you even find land to develop new shelter locally when you're competing with developers who want to pay millions of dollars for it? I mean, it's money, man. It's money. Money's going to talk. How do you get past that?
I think one of the things when we serve 0 to 60% AMI income, you know.
What is it,
0 to 60? It's really, when you talk about literal homelessness, that's straight homelessness or people in shelters, a large percentage starts with 0 income or with very few.
Like they've lost everything, they've lost their job and they have 0 income.
So at that point you need subsidies.
Okay.
At that point you also need, for the housing unit development, you need government involvement. You can't do it with the private market.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where the conversations are happening, where we're looking at, okay, we need some models that other cities have for permanent supportive housing, what that needs to look like for the most vulnerable people, for people with severe mental health, for, you know, disabilities, physical disabilities. What does that look like? And in Nashville, we need to really focus on that and create that type of housing.
All right, we're going to talk about how maybe and where we're going with that, and if the problem is getting worse as we grow, you know, there's going to be more people that need help. We'll take a break. When we come back, the number is 737-7587. Your thoughts, questions for them on homelessness. We've got some calls already in. If you stay on hold, we'll get to you after this. If you want to join us, give us a call. We'll be back right after this.